Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
Lying in bed next to her snoring husband, Cristiana Méndez replayed the events of the evening in her mind. Here she brought rat poison, here she took out a large bowl of ground meat from the refrigerator, separated a small portion into a bowl, and quickly mixed in white powder. Then, inconveniently enough, her neighbor Elvira came by, supposedly asking for some salt. Yes, of course. As if Cristiana doesn't understand why Elvira showed up, knowing very well that the Méndez family had just slaughtered a pig. And that means there's plenty to eat. There's the neighbor, looking around with her audacious eyes. What is this? How much ground meat do you have here? What a good pig, so fatty. Did you add beef? Yes, right. Probably made some bacon too? Oh, your bacon turns out so good, Cristiana. She keeps talking and talking. And there's no getting rid of her until you give her something to shut her up and make her leave. So Cristiana had to do just that. She took out the bacon from the refrigerator and handed it to that annoying neighbor. Listened to another round of farewell cackles and, with a sigh of relief, closed the door behind her in the backyard. She returned to the kitchen. Good heavens! The cat reached the bowl of ground meat and is eating it. And sensing that it's been noticed, it jumped off the table, tipped over the bowl, which was standing higher, and landed right into the large bowl. What should I do? Cristiana agonized, contemplating the consequences of the cat's mischief. Oh, you old witch! She cursed her neighbor. Something needed to be decided. The ground meat was a pity. And the cat, poor thing, will die now, fool. It was a good cat, affectionate, and caught mice excellently. Well, not just mice, it even brought rats regularly, and rat-catching cats are quite rare. All in all, it seemed that the plan with the poison failed. But Cristiana was not one to retreat, that wasn't her nature. She decided to poison her daughter-in-law. Enough is enough. The daughter-in-law doesn't want to work in the field or the garden at all, doesn't help with Cristiana's household chores, and on top of that, she refuses to have children. I'm still young. I'm not ready for children yet, she says. Well, what audacity. She lazes around all day, reads some books, supposedly studies online. Ugh. She regularly paints her long nails, but you won't make her peel potatoes, she calls it manicure. In short, she's not a daughter-in-law, but a total disappointment. Anything Cristiana cooks, it turns her stomach. What is this? Fried potatoes with bacon? Horrible. Too greasy, I can't eat something like that. She throws money left and right. One moment she'll buy expensive coffee, the next she'll get various imported garbage that's inedible, avocados, kiwis, different kinds of mango, making a special trip to the city for them. And guess what? She has a car. Her daddy, supposedly, gave it to her. But there's no way you can get her to take you to the farmer's market or anywhere else for a real purpose. She just gives you those wide, mascara-coated eyes and scoffs. I don't have time, I'm busy now. We know what her busy means, she sits in her own internet all day long, may she disappear with it. Cristiana said to her son, why did you get involved with that city girl? She won't live properly here, and she'll ruin you, mark my words. City folks can't handle rural life, that's as true as white eggs don't come from black hens. It was a mistake for Fidelio to marry Juliana. Oh, what a mistake. Despite Cristiana's opposition to the marriage, who listens to their elders nowadays? They live by their own minds. Try saying a word, and they're up in arms. They get all puffed up like roosters. We'll figure it out ourselves, Mom. Let them figure it out, but keep your pockets wide open. With all these fights, they won't be waiting for grandchildren with them and their father, that's for sure. And those endless sideways glances from Juliana, reproaches, and scandals out of nowhere. So what if Cristiana rearranged things in their closet? Oh, what a scandal! And she said to that arrogant girl exactly what she deserved. How dare you, Juliana, buy such expensive underwear? It must have cost Fidelio half his salary, I'm sure. How dare you, Méndez, rummage through my lingerie? Who gave you permission to inspect my wardrobe? The bride got all worked up like a mad mare. I can't believe we're discussing my underwear and its cost. And why shouldn't we discuss it when the price is outrageous? The mother-in-law didn't give in. Where do you get off? Did you receive a bill from the store? I don't need a bill, my dear. Do you think you're the only smart one? Or do I not know how much they charge fools like you for those lacy stripes? Well, you know, Senora Méndez, this goes beyond any reasonable limits. Juliana shut herself in the room and slammed the door, nearly bringing the house down. And then she went and told Fidelio, and she had a quarrel with her son, damn it. And it continued like that for more than a day. It even reached the point where the family started talking about it to other relatives, ashamed to go outside. Cristiana was on her way to the store when Iván Jiménez, a distant relative on her mother's side, came toward her and pounced on her as if Cristiana owed her for half a year and wasn't in a hurry to repay. What, have you completely lost your mind, Jiménez? Cristiana got angry. I haven't touched her even once. Sure, I gave her a little advice for her own good, but that's all. You know how the youth is nowadays. The youth is normal, just like anyone else. Remember yourself at their age, Cristiana. They're young, they want to live their lives, not stay under your apron. Stop these attacks of yours, or you'll bring trouble upon yourself, mark my words. Tisk, Cristiana sneered contemptuously. So now you're her defender, huh? And what's your sorrow in all of this? Well, she happens to be the daughter of my school friend, Vittoria Cano. Ah, Cristiana pursed her lips. No wonder the apple didn't fall far from the tree. You're a sore spot, Méndez, Iván said, looking Cristiana straight in the eyes, serious and even somewhat sad. A sore spot, she repeated, sighed, and walked away. That incident completely ruined Cristiana's mood, as if she needed any more emptiness in her life. And after a year of such life, the patience of the mother-in-law reached its limit. As soon as Fidelio left for work, his foolish little wife, all dolled up, would rush out, looking repulsive. Where on earth was she going every day? She'd drive her expensive car out of the yard and head towards the city. She'd only return home closer to nightfall. Cristiana cautiously said to her son, mindful of previous scandals, not to interfere, not to meddle in her affairs, and all that. She said it gently, sparing him. So, son, where does your wife go every day? And he calmly replied that she had exams now, you know. Exams? Can you believe it? Oh, Cristiana would have said what those exams were called correctly, but she bit her tongue just in time. She realized that talking wouldn't help, she needed to act more subtly. Cristiana packed her travel bag, told them at home that she was going away for 2 days to the city for some shopping, that she would stay overnight at a friend's place, and early in the morning, she left on the first intercity bus. She did stop by her friend's place and went shopping too, but her main goal was completely different. In a familiar place in the old part of the city market, Cristiana bought rat poison. She always got it there, and she had known the saleswoman for 100 years. So, Cristiana, rats bothering you again? I thought you said your cat is a good rat catcher. Can't handle it, huh? Oh, he can't handle it, he can't. There's this huge, cunning rat that's beyond the cat's abilities. Ah, well, in that case, poison is the only solution. They chatted and went their separate ways, satisfied with each other. Little did the saleswoman know that Cristiana wasn't planning to poison a rat this time. And that same evening, Cristiana was in high spirits, as if it were a celebration. She served pasta with sauce, garnished with herbs and mustard, everything as it should be, to all the guests present. Well, with such a feast, my dear wife, we should have some aguardiente too, Vasco declared. You shall have your aguardiente. I'll bring it from the pantry now, Cristiana promised, smiling. Looks like your mother is in a good mood today, Vasco poked his son in the side. See how generous she is. Don't you wonder what's up with her? In response, Fidelio just shrugged his shoulders, like, who knows? Cristiana continued bustling around with unwavering energy. Cristiana, what's the occasion today? Vasco asked. Don't you remember? Cristiana squinted her eyes. I don't think so. Well, my dear, today is the day we met 35 years ago. Wow, time flies. And I don't remember anything anymore, Vasco burst out laughing. You're right about that. Indeed, my dear, you're absolutely right. What can you expect from you, men? You can barely remember your own childhood birthdays, Cristiana sneered contemptuously. Exactly, Elvira, the neighbor who was visiting that evening, chimed in. You're right, Cristiana. Something amazing happened with my late husband. And with a sigh, Elvira delved into her memories, only interesting to her. Fidelio, shall we go? Juliana suddenly nudged her husband's leg under the table. In a moment, let's sit a little longer. Juliana let out a heavy sigh and stared at her plate of detestable pasta. She couldn't stand this greasy, calorie-laden food. Her body couldn't digest such things, and that was that. But whenever she came to her mother-in-law's for dinner or some celebration, it was always like this. They never ate anything else. No wonder they were all so excessively overweight. Even Sofia, Fidelio's sister, was gaining weight. Only her husband managed to resist, not succumbing to the family traditions. But it's all right, they would soon move away from here and live their own way, without instructions and advice. Juliana's optimistic thoughts were interrupted by the shrill outcry of her mother-in-law. Juliana, if you keep eating like this, you'll definitely get gastritis. What gastritis, Cristiana Méndez? Juliana replied irritably. The usual kind that turns into an ulcer, the mother-in-law cheerfully informed her, clattering the plates. And mind you, young lady, you still have to give birth, and she gestured toward Juliana with a ladle. You should not only think about yourself, but also about your future children. Juliana didn't respond to that anymore, she just made a disgusted grimace. Enough, she thought to herself and let out a heavy sigh. Her husband leaned towards her and whispered, Are you feeling unwell? Maybe eat a few more bites? All right, just for you, her beloved wife said with her eyes. Cristiana noticed it all and suddenly smirked. Things were progressing. She didn't expect the entire portion to work, of course, but even half should do the trick. The people, fed with pasta and various snacks accompanied by alcohol, grew sluggish. Heartfelt conversations, jokes, and anecdotes ensued. Then the soul yearned for songs, and Elvira sang a mournful tune. Demelo hoy mejor que mañana. Cristiana flinched. Conscience, drowned in anger and alcohol, stirred uncomfortably inside her, but she forcefully suppressed that unnecessary impulse and went to brew coffee. She didn't remember much afterwards for some reason. They sang a lot, drank coffee with cookies and apple pie. They lingered for a long time, and it became completely dark outside. Then, they seemed to disperse and go home. Cristiana couldn't recall washing the dishes. Maybe I didn't, she thought in the darkness of her bedroom. She couldn't remember how she made it to bed either. However, she vividly remembered her husband drunkenly shouting some silly nonsense. After lying for a while, Cristiana got up and looked at her snoring husband with disgust. In the dim strip of light from the street lamp outside, he resembled a pile of rumbling chaos, producing the most extraordinary sounds. The kitchen was all cleaned up, which seemed odd. The cuckoo clock showed it was 3 o'clock. Cristiana put the coffee pot on the stove to brew coffee, took out a box of chocolates, and sat at the table, waiting for the bitter drink to be ready. Resting her chin on her hands, she stared out of the dark kitchen window. It was quiet, except for the sound of her husband snoring, faintly heard even through the closed door. The sky, illuminated by distant lights from the highway, appeared as a tiny spot above the pitch-black yard. A cherry branch methodically scratched against the window, bending under the wind. And suddenly, Cristiana recoiled from the table, knocking over a stool. For a moment, she saw a pale blue lifeless face of Juliana in the window. With disheveled hair and crazed, maliciously bulging eyes, she pressed her forehead against the glass, and with abnormally long pale hands with black claws, she pushed against the window frame as if trying to squeeze through and enter the house. Cristiana's heart pounded in her head, in her legs, everywhere. Heat rushed through her, followed by cold chills, and her hair stood on end. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out, only a stifled whisper. "Begone, evil spirit." The vision listened and disappeared. Cristiana slumped to the floor and, with trembling hands, began to grope around, searching for something to hold onto. Rising up, she walked unsteadily towards the stove. She was a strong woman, after all. Having recovered a bit from the initial fright, she composed herself, rummaged through the medicine cabinet, found a sedative, poured half a bottle into a glass, and drank it in one gulp. Then, after sitting for a while, she brewed herself a cup of tea instead of coffee, took out a jar of jam, drank a good amount, and went to the door of the annex, to the inner part. There was no question of going outside after what she had seen. She stopped at the thin temporary door that hastily covered the entrance to her son's half, concealed herself, and listened intently. She didn't hear anything at all. Oh, she had stood like this many nights, trying to catch a whiff of what was happening there. Sometimes it seemed like there was music playing or the television murmuring, occasionally laughter, especially when friends came over, but she could never make out the conversations. It annoyed Cristiana. Once, unable to resist, she partially opened the cardboard door, as it was called in the house, and leaned inside, listening intently. But even that didn't help. The young ones turned on the stereo, and the songs drowned out their dialogue. She only managed to make out something like, "Well, how much longer? Let's wait. And when will we be there? It will all work out, kitten." But just at the most interesting part, the second door, which led from the hallway to the annex kitchen, suddenly opened, and Juliana herself, in an outrageously short robe that revealed everything possible, came out with a cigarette in her hand, followed by her son. "And here I am," Cristiana started cheerfully, thinking on her feet to come up with something. "Well, now do you see?" Juliana asked Fidelio, turning away, her voice trembling. And she didn't even say hello, that impudent girl, as if Cristiana wasn't standing right in front of her. She went back into the annex and then didn't show up for a couple of days. Fidelio said she fell ill. But now it was completely quiet. Understandably so, it was night. They must be asleep, Cristiana thought unexpectedly calmly, as if she didn't remember what she had done the day before. Sedative must have taken effect, she apathetically thought again and went back to the bedroom. Nothing had changed there. Cristiana lay down next to her husband again and closed her eyes. Immediately, various thoughts began to creep into her mind. What if Fidelio wakes up and finds out? What if I didn't put enough poison in the meat, or if it doesn't work completely? What if they take samples for analysis and everything is revealed? "You should have thought about it earlier, you foolish woman," someone suddenly said in her head. Cristiana steadfastly pushed away any unpleasant thoughts and eventually fell asleep. Morning arrived on schedule, indistinguishable from previous mornings. They got up, stoked the stove, fed the animals, prepared breakfast, and ate, accompanied by coffee. "You can't hear our young at all," said her husband, stretching contentedly after his third cup of coffee with pie. "It's Saturday, they're sleeping in," Cristiana responded out of habit, examining her neglected nails. "Maybe I should go to Rosa as well, get a manicure," suddenly occurred to her out of nowhere. Rosa, the cat lady, was the only manicurist, cosmetologist, and hairdresser in the village. The nickname Cat Lady had stuck to her a long time ago when she brought her first Scottish cats from the city. At that time, the villagers simply shook their heads, thinking she had gone mad, spending so much money on cats. But unexpectedly, even to Rosa herself, her business took off. The cats produced offspring, and then more and more. Kittens were quickly snatched up, sometimes even from other cities. She had adapted to sending them away. The business, as they say, was booming. Cats of different ages were constantly bustling around her house. At the moment, she had about 9 regular adult cats, all identical, milky-colored with dark brown faces, paws, and tails. This came to Cristiana's mind as she carefully examined her nails as a background to keep her mind occupied. But the main concern on her mind had nothing to do with that. Cristiana anxiously awaited the moment when she would hear something from the annex. The silence was unbearable. "Why aren't they getting up and showing themselves in the yard, as if they both vanished?" her husband joked, looking out the window. Cristiana couldn't take it anymore, her nerves couldn't handle it. "You jinx it, you old fool," she hissed and went to the annex to see what was happening there. "Vasco! Vasco!" A piercing scream reached her husband after a couple of minutes. "What's going on?" Vasco rushed over, hastily pulling up his pants that were slipping down, and witnessed this scene. His wife stood in the middle of the young couple's bedroom, her eyes tragically rolled back, holding her forehead with one hand and leaning on the bed's back with the other. "What's with all the screaming?" Vasco asked, annoyed. "Can't you see?" "What do you mean? What am I supposed to see?" "Well, there's no one here." "Oh, what a shame," Vasco shrugged. "They left early somewhere, just packed up and left. They didn't even say a word to you, huh?" "Don't worry, you'll get over it." "You don't understand." Cristiana burst out. "They're completely gone, completely." Concerned, Vasco looked at his wife, as if assessing her mental state and considering whether to call the sanitarium or wait a little longer. Realizing that he still hadn't grasped the situation, Cristiana shouted. "They took off with their things. Look, the wardrobe is empty, the kitchen is completely empty too. They left us without a word." Well, Vasco sat down on the bed and only now noticed that it wasn't covered with the beautiful lilac bedspread as usual. "That's exactly it, they left," Cristiana sobbed. "And how come we didn't hear anything? The cars are probably gone from the garage too, go and see." Further inspection revealed that indeed the cars were gone. The garage wasn't even locked from the outside. It seemed that the young couple was in such a hurry to leave that they didn't bother to lock it. Additionally, some supplies from the outdoor pantry and all the household appliances from the annex had disappeared, except for the washing machine. And the TV, they took the TV too. I haven't even finished paying for it. Slightly calmer, Cristiana began to ponder the situation. How quickly should the poison have taken effect? Where did the young couple go? What if something happens on the road and Fidelio is driving or, God forbid, Juliana, they could both get killed? "You wanted to ruin your daughter-in-law, but you ruined your own son," the internal voice resurfaced. And as if echoing it, a hairy chained dog in the yard let out a piercing, mournful howl. Cristiana howled along with it, swaying on the stool and hugging herself. Why is the dog howling like that? Sophia entered the house. "Mom, what's wrong?" she exclaimed, seeing her mother in such a disheveled state. "Oh, we're in trouble, Sophia, trouble," Cristiana mournfully conveyed, continuing to cry. "What happened?" Her daughter shook her mother's shoulders. "Dad, what's wrong with her?" Fidelio left with Juliana, her father informed, and seeing his daughter's confusion, he explained, they packed up and left. "And is that it?" Sophia smiled. "Come on, Mom, I've been saying it for a long time, it's time for them to live with their own home. What's the big deal? What's the big deal?" Cristiana cried. "What's the deal?" And they didn't say a word, they ran away as if from enemies. "They'll settle down and let us know where they've stopped," Sophia reassured her. "You knew?" Cristiana suddenly exclaimed. "No," Sophia replied uncertainly. "But I had my suspicions," she thought to herself. "Well then," Vasco said, "stop crying, no one has died yet. Sophia is right, they'll show up again. Or have you forgotten how you separated from your own mother?" The last remark was directed at Cristiana, who, upon hearing the phrase "no one has died yet," began to sob again, as if at a funeral. The relatives dispersed, and lunchtime was approaching. Vasco went outside, busy with something. Cristiana reluctantly had to attend to her daily chores. However, nothing seemed to stick, everything slipped from her hands. Cristiana went to the bedroom and lay down with a wet towel on her head. "I'll just lie here until I die," she thought maliciously, wiping away her tears. "No one cares anyway." She couldn't sleep, and Cristiana immersed herself in memories. There were her children, Fidelio and Sofia, so young, running around the yard, playing. Her own mother-in-law, now deceased, sitting on a bench under the window, keeping a watchful eye to prevent any mishaps or accidents while Cristiana, a young, healthy girl, took care of the household. Oh, how hard they used to work back then, unlike the current generation, who don't want to lift a finger, always unwilling and too busy. But she and her husband worked in the collective farm and managed their own household. They would wake up at the crack of dawn, first feed their livestock, then head to the collective farm. Cristiana worked as a milkmaid her entire life, and her husband operated a tractor. In the evenings, there were still chores to do at home, cooking, washing, ironing. They lived a decent life. They raised their children, and God blessed them with grandchildren, Sophia's 2 children growing up. But Cristiana's mother-in-law was always dissatisfied with something. She didn't wash things properly, didn't cook something right, didn't say the right things. Sometimes she would stand in the middle of the kitchen, hands on her hips. "Cristiana, why haven't you sorted the potatoes yet? They'll go bad." I will, Mom," the young girl would dismissively reply. She used to call her mother-in-law mother, as is customary, unlike the current daughters-in-law. "No need to feed me breakfasts," scolded the mother-in-law. "Go to the barn, I'll keep an eye on things. My hands don't work anymore, but I can lend a hand with words." "Your eyes don't work either, all you want to do is give orders." Cristiana wanted to respond to her mother-in-law, but she restrained herself and remained silent. Not like Juliana, bless her. Cristiana's sad memories were interrupted by a sharp ring at the door. Who could it be? "The gate is always open, all our own villagers know it and come and go," thoughts rushed in her mind. It seemed that someone unfamiliar had come. And indeed, the front door slammed shut. Vasco's voice boomed, and another male voice joined in. The bedroom door opened, and Vasco, peeking inside, said, "Cristiana, what are you doing here? Can't you see? I have a headache." His wife snapped, sitting up on the pillow. "Who brought someone here?" The local police officer, Ramon, came. "The police officer?" Cristiana panicked, jumping off the bed. "Yes, he's asking for you." "Why?" Cristiana felt dizzy, and the room swayed like in a fog. "Something unpleasant has happened. Come on, see for yourself." "Oh, we have heavy sins," Cristiana muttered to herself, holding her heart, and walked unsteadily on cotton legs to the kitchen. There, indeed, sat Ramon, as the local police officer was called by the villagers. "Good day," he raised his cap. "Hello, Ramon," Cristiana replied. "Are you here for something or just for a cup of coffee? Or maybe something stronger? We made pasta yesterday, there's a lot. Would you like to try it? How's your mother doing?" "Thank you, everything is good." "I'm on duty, we're not allowed," Ramon defended himself, but still glanced at the sideboard. "Actually, I'm here on official business regarding a certain matter." Cristiana fell silent, feeling overwhelmed, desperately swallowing air. "Granny Moreno came to the police station this morning," the police officer continued, taking out some papers from his folder, with a complaint. "A complaint? Patricia Moreno?" Cristiana and Vasco asked in confusion. "What does that have to do with us?" "Well, yes," Ramon frowned. Patricia Moreno, 83 years old, was the most annoying troublemaker in the village. Despite her advanced age, she moved faster than the young people, always present everywhere, always knowing everything, and no event could pass without her active involvement, at least in discussions. Here's the thing. A cat came to her last night, and she claims it dropped dead right in the middle of her hut. But first, everything around her, excuse my language, was covered in some unbearable filth. It's recorded in the victim's statement. Ramon, frowning, looked around the Méndez family. I didn't understand, Ramon. The homeowner stared at the police officer in astonishment. What do you mean, a cat? Apparently, it's yours, Vasco, Ramon grinned. Cristiana sat quietly, immediately understanding the situation. Mentally bidding farewell to the cat yesterday, she could never have imagined that Patricia Moreno would be the witness to such a gruesome death. Well, shall we go see the cat? The officer said, standing up. Where to? The homeowners didn't understand. To Moreno's place. The cat is still lying there, a huge striped tomcat. It seems to be yours, indeed. She insists that you rectify the consequences and compensate her for the moral damage. What the hell? Vasco cursed. I'll take care of her moral damage now. No, Vasco, Cristiana unexpectedly intervened. Let's go, enough of this. You know her, she'll get anyone she wants. We should go, Ramon said, slightly embarrassed, or I'll have to go to the station and file a report. What is this report for? Vasco exploded. Did I vomit on her floor or something? If it is established that the cat belongs to you, the responsibility for the damage caused by it falls on the owners, the police officer explained, adding, Don't get angry, Senor Vasco, it's just protocol, you understand. Damn it, the man spat, let's go. Cristiana sighed, opened the refrigerator, put the pasta in a container to appease the troublemaker Patricia, and went to get dressed. Well, Senora Méndez, the officer asked in an official tone when they arrived, have you identified the cat? Yes, sadly I have, Cristiana agreed, it's my cat, my own, and she even shed a tear. With sadness, the couple returned home. Cristiana agonized, hoping not to hear about an accident on the road involving her son. But the day passed, evening came, and no one else disturbed them. The house was unusually quiet, not a sound came from the annex. Cristiana cried bitterly, unaware of what awaited her. The following week, there was no news from their son and daughter-in-law. Overwhelmed by longing, worry, and guilt, Cristiana succumbed to a severe cold. Her head was splitting, her whole body ached as if on fire. Vasco took care of her as best he could. Their daughter initially helped a lot, but a few days later, her own child fell ill, and now she came rarely, torn between her sick child and her mother. Cristiana had already lost track of time, unsure whether it was morning or night. She would briefly fall into a heavy, painful sleep and wake up when she had to. Moreover, guilt, shame, and fear tormented her terribly. She begged her husband to go to the police to find their son, saying she felt deeply sorry and wanted to ask for forgiveness before dying. But he dismissed it as delirium caused by illness. The local doctor came and said there was no danger to her life, just a severe virus. One day, waking up, Cristiana found Adela, a former neighbor and close friend of her daughter, next to her bed. A couple of years ago, Adela had moved from their village to the regional center and had become more urban, but she often visited her mother and dropped by to see her friends. Senora Méndez! Adela exclaimed happily when she saw Cristiana open her eyes. Hello. Hello, Adela, Cristiana weakly smiled and spoke. What brings you here? Well, I came to see my mother. She's also fallen ill. The whole village has been hit by this contagious virus. I stopped by Sophia's place and then came to you. I brought some treats, she gestured towards the bundle near the bedside table. Thank you, dear, you never forget about us, Cristiana gratefully responded. Well, you're all like family to me, Adela smiled and kissed Cristiana's cheek, making her tear up. Oh, Adela, we're in trouble. Fidelio left without a word. We still don't know anything about what happened. Yes, Sophia already told me. I sympathize. Thank you, my dear. And why didn't he marry you? Cristiana suddenly added, wiping her eyes. The guest just smiled sadly and tactfully remained silent. Let's get better, Cristiana Méndez, and we'll go to the homeopath again. We'll show Sophia's children and treat you too. Thank you, my dear, if you insist. Cristiana had a very close relationship with Adela. One could say she was like a second daughter to her. Cristiana had been friends with Adela's mother, Liana, since childhood. The children grew up together, running around in a pack, swimming together, and sledding in the winter. In high school, Fidelio started showing interest in Adela. After school, they started dating, and it seemed like they were heading towards marriage. But then that city girl, Juliana, appeared on the horizon, a pox on her. Everything was going so well. Adela was their girl, from the village, almost like family, so obedient, affectionate, always ready to help in any way. Cristiana teared up again and vividly recalled that evening when Fidelio brought Juliana to meet them, his parents. He had only mentioned the day before that he had broken up with Adela and was planning to get married. Imagine that, already getting married to a city girl he barely knew. Cristiana was shocked. And there she was, strutting in with her little son, speaking to him as if he were her own possessions, treating them, older adults and the parents of her future husband, with an air of superiority. "Hello, it's so nice to be here," she said, pursing her lips disdainfully. "Where can I wash my hands?" "Here," Cristiana shows her the corner of the kitchen where the sink is located. "Here?" Juliana's eyes showed disgust. "And where do you get the soap?" "Here is the soap. Just regular soap for washing clothes. What else do you need?" She looked as if she had been offered manure, pursed her lips, and walked away. "All right, I'll use a wet wipe then." They sat down to dinner. Everything as it should be: fried chicken, cabbage turnovers, mashed potatoes, all sorts of pickled vegetables. "Don't give me so much, please." "I don't eat that much," she said. "Why, are you trying to maintain your figure?" Cristiana laughed. "So much fatty food is harmful anyway," the future wife replied, and Cristiana looked at her critically, quite imposing. She also declined the homemade wine; it would give her a headache. She didn't even taste the pie, not even a slice to keep up appearances. Why insult people like that? When they talked about the wedding, Cristiana began asking how many guests would be on her side and how many girls for the bachelorette party. For the bachelorette party? Juliana was astonished, her eyes wide open. "Fidelio and I don't like that. We're not just anyone. No surprise parties, no annoyances, no silly contests. After the wedding, we'll have a small gathering at a restaurant, and that's enough." "What do you mean no parties, no costumes?" Cristiana was astonished. "How can that be? It's embarrassing in front of all our guests. Mom, we're getting married, no strangers. Who is more important to you?" Fidelio said. "Well, there you have it. My son is gone, the villager is cornered," the woman said in her head. And so it was. Nothing that had always been done and accepted was liked by the young couple, or rather, Juliana didn't like it, and Fidelio always took her side. Not wanting to get along with her mother-in-law or be in the same room, they decided to take a break from seeing their father for 2 months. Cristiana resisted accepting it, even withdrew money from the bank account. Her son had his own room, a backyard, kitchen, and bedroom of his own, practically an apartment. So, what was the problem? The bride still wasn't happy. Why was the door taken out of the house? There was no autonomy, anyone could enter at any time. "But, why not?" an indignant Cristiana said. "What if it's necessary to check the gas boiler when you're not here? Should we act like strangers?" "Why not?" the cunning blonde replied and looked Cristiana in the eyes, shameless and conscienceless. And Adela suffered for a long time after breaking up with Fidelio. Her mother, Liana, told Cristiana that the girl would cry at night, unable to forget him. However, Adela did attend the wedding and even congratulated the groom and bride, just like all the other guests. She smiled, danced, and then she moved to the city, far away from them. It was understandable. It's not easy to forget love when it's constantly in front of your eyes. Adela never got married. she enrolled in a pharmaceutical college. At first, she lived in a dormitory, then found a job in a pharmacy, and eventually started renting an apartment with someone. Whenever she visited the village, she would interact amicably, always avoiding unnecessary encounters with Fidelio and Juliana. She helped her mother as much as she could. She even helped Cristiana improve her health, taking her to a familiar homeopath, a doctor who treated everything with herbs. She even negotiated a discounted rate for Adela. It lightened her burden, her blood pressure stabilized, and the constant pain subsided. The doctor said, "It's nerves, in your case." Well, who could doubt it? With such events, one needs nerves of steel, especially dealing with Juliana every day. It's like being on a battlefield. Well, may God grant Adela good health and a good groom. 10 sessions with the doctor contributed significantly. Although his treatments were somewhat peculiar. He would put his hands on her head, murmuring something, and she would feel drowsy. Then, when she seemed to regain consciousness, he would give her a tablet and some powders to take it home. But overall, it helped. Once Cristiana regained her strength, she began to plan another trip to the city to see the homeopath. She called Adela to arrange an appointment, as it had become their routine. She packed her things, told her husband she was leaving, and headed to the bus stop. 15 minutes later, she was on her way to the regional center, gazing out the window at the passing landscape. The fields had already been harvested, and light snowfall had occurred a couple of times, indicating winter's approach. How can I find out about Fidelio? Cristiana wondered, still tormented. Each passing day made the uncertainty more unbearable. She was agonizingly tormented, and her husband remained unnaturally calm, saying, "They'll show up, just wait for the deadline." Her daughter didn't know anything either. Her brother hadn't written or called her to. Maybe I should visit Juliana's mother, Cristiana thought, but she immediately dismissed the idea as entirely unacceptable. How could she face that woman? Suddenly, a thought struck her like a falling stone. You're a killer, a real killer. You've destroyed a living soul. A wave of heat rushed over Cristiana, and for a moment, she felt a horrifying self-awareness, unable to believe what she had done. But it quickly passed, and her usual state of indifferent anger returned. Then, like a cold shower, panic washed over her soul, praying that it wouldn't afflict anyone else. Dear God. I need to go to the temple, that's what, Cristiana thought. And maybe I should still stop by Barbara's after the doctor. She surely knows about her daughter. And why haven't the police come yet if everything worked out? This thought stirred up Cristiana again, but she managed to push it away and ordered herself to calm down. Surprisingly, she succeeded. "Hello, Senora Méndez," Adela greeted her with a smile at the bus stop. "How was the journey?" "It's all good, dear, everything's fine." "You shouldn't have worried, I would have managed on my own." "Forget about it, what worries are you talking about?" "Give me your bag." "Oh, darling, you shouldn't be carrying bags. You're still young, you need to take care of your health." "Not far to carry," Adela laughed. "I have a car." "You bought a car?" Cristiana was surprised. "Yes, and I got my driver's license too." "I've been driving for 2 months now," Adela proudly announced. They quickly reached the doctor's office. As usual, there were few people in the waiting room. It was understandable, as it was a private medical center and each consultation cost a pretty penny. But Cristiana had become so accustomed to these procedures that, if she didn't come for some time, she would start feeling somewhat anxious. "Good day." As she opened the door, Cristiana was amazed by the cleanliness and order reigning in the office, as well as the doctor himself. His appearance was indeed extraordinary. He mostly resembled some kind of Indian, but without the turban, tanned skin, quick and attentive black eyes, a slender and taut figure. The corresponding paintings hung on the walls, multi-armed, multi-headed gods, women with blue faces and snakes in their hair. "Good day, respected Senora Méndez," the doctor greeted energetically. And not for the first time, Cristiana caught herself thinking that although his speech was impeccably polite and articulate, there was something wrong with it, a slight accent and a cautious smoothness. "So, how are we feeling?" the doctor inquired. "Well, I was very sick here, and now it's worse. My head hurts again, and different thoughts keep coming up." "Thoughts are normal. A regular person can't do without them," the doctor laughed. "A state without thoughts is called nirvana. Only the chosen ones can enter it." "But my thoughts are not like usual," Cristiana surrendered. "And what kind, if I may ask?" "Intrusive ones," Cristiana replied. The doctor pondered. "Specifically?" "I can't tell," Cristiana honestly said. "Well, all right, it's not a problem. Let's proceed with the treatment session, and I dare say, I will rid you of most of these intrusive thoughts." The doctor rubbed his hands satisfactorily, "and your headache will go away." Cristiana sighed contentedly and closed her eyes. "I wish it would start already," she thought, and the next moment she was already drifting away. The thing is, the doctor she was seeing combined methods of homeopathic treatment and hypnotic influence. However, Cristiana herself hardly fully realized it. It seemed to her that she simply relaxed wonderfully during these sessions, dozed off a bit, and then didn't remember some parts of the procedure. But her head felt much lighter, and that was the main and decisive factor. "Adela, my dear, I want to thank you once again," she said, a couple of hours later, sitting in a cafe where Adela persuaded her to go. The atmosphere was very pleasant, small tables, various knickknacks on the walls, and the desserts were delicious. "What wonderful pastries, and I really liked the hot chocolate too. I want to learn how to make it at home. How many orange slices do you think they put in there? Or is it juice?" "I think it's more likely orange syrup," Cristiana Méndez replied Adela, pushing her coffee cup aside. "I can see that things are going well for you. You even bought a car. Well done. I suppose someone is helping you?" Cristiana asked slyly, winking. "I hope you found yourself a good man, no less than my Fidelio." Here the woman sighed sadly. "No," Adela smiled, "I haven't found anyone, and I doubt I will. I took out a loan." "Ah," Cristiana extended, "it's hard to manage it all on your own." "Well, my mother helps me a little." "By the way, Adela," Cristiana hesitated as if she had remembered something, "could you find out about our Fidelio and Heliana from Heliana's mother?" "From Heliana's mother?" Adela was surprised. "But I don't even know her. Why are you asking me about it? Why don't you go to her yourself?" "Oh, indeed, why?" Cristiana thought. After a little reflection, she came to the conclusion that she couldn't think of a single reason why she couldn't contact Heliana's mother herself. The thing was, after today's visit to the doctor, she had completely and irreversibly forgotten that she had tried to poison her future daughter-in-law. "You know, Adela, you're right, I will visit her myself. Please don't pay attention to my foolish old age nonsense. I said things I don't even know why. Forgive me, for God's sake." "Oh, Cristiana Méndez," Adela laughed, "there's nothing for me to forgive you for, everything is fine. Let's go, I'll take you to Heliana's mother, just tell me the address." "The address?" Cristiana struggled to remember the house number. She hadn't been there for a long time, and even in better times, she had only visited her sister-in-law twice. "Adela, my dear, you don't have to go through so much trouble for me. It's nothing, it's practically on my way. Will you be there for long? I'll quickly run some errands and then drop you off at the bus station." Cristiana simply looked gratefully at the girl and thought again, if only Adela, not Heliana, had been my daughter-in-law. And she doesn't abandon me. And who am I to her, if you think about it? Cristiana's eyes moistened, and she almost cried with tenderness and fondness. "Well, here we are." Adela stopped the car near the entrance. Cristiana got out, waved her hand at Adela, and headed towards the desired door. Elevator. 5th floor. Why is her heart pounding? What could it be? Her heart was supposed to be healthy. And there it is, Barbara's apartment. Oh, what a forgetful mind. Cristiana suddenly remembered that she hadn't even called her sister-in-law, hadn't informed her about her visit. What if she's not even home, and Cristiana came to the other end of the city, and Adela went out of her way. But there was nothing to be done. She was already at the door. Sighing, Cristiana rang the doorbell. Silence. She pressed the button again, still no response. Disheartened, she walked back to the elevator. And wouldn't you know it? As the automatic elevator doors opened at the exit, she came face to face with Barbara. "Oh, Barbara, good day. I actually came to see you. I forgot to call, can you imagine?" Getting old is no joy, Cristiana exaggeratedly and loudly spoke, feigning busyness. "And how dare you come here?" Such anger reflected on the woman's face that Cristiana recoiled. "What are you doing, Barbara?" "It's me, Cristiana. Why are you acting like this?" "Why am I acting like this?" "I will call the police right now. Get out of here, and don't you dare show your face here again." Cristiana looked at Barbara in horror, trying to understand why she was being treated this way. Tears welled up in her eyes. She grabbed Barbara's hand and started muttering quickly. "Listen, I just wanted to know where our young ones are. They haven't sent a word, not a call. It's been a month and a half, and I've been worried sick. Barbara, please, you know." "Screw you." Barbara, snatching her handbag from the woman's grip, literally jumped back, pushing her away. "How dare you, after everything you've done?" "What? What have I done?" Cristiana, sobbing, held onto her heart, then gripped the stair railing to avoid falling. "Barbara, I apologize for the oversight. Here is the translation into English, with direct speech indicated by dashes instead of quotation marks." But Barbara had already left in the elevator, ignoring her cries. Barely able to stand, Cristiana walked out of the entrance and collapsed on a bench. Her head was spinning, her heart pounding furiously. She was soaked with sweat from this horrifying scene. "I don't understand anything," thought Cristiana. "Why is she like this? What did I do wrong? Like mother, like daughter. Both of them acting like rabid dogs. I just wanted to talk, like a human being. Oh, my cruel fate. Where are you, my dear son? Why don't you let us know about yourself? Your mother will soon die from sorrow." In a terrible state, Adela found her when she returned after about 40 minutes to take her to the train station. "What happened?" she asked worriedly, embracing Cristiana by the shoulders. "Did someone offend you, Senora Méndez?" "Offended? Oh, offended. And for what? What have I done to her?" cried Cristiana, her eyes red from tears. "Here's the thing," said Adela briskly, "you can't go anywhere in this condition. Let's go to my place. Calm down, stay overnight, and we'll see from there. The morning is wiser than the evening." Cristiana didn't object. She was currently not in a state to object or even think. When Cristiana woke up in the morning, she didn't immediately realize where she was. The small cozy room was so bright and sunny, as if it were April outside, not November. Gradually, everything came back to her. The horrible scene in the entrance with Barbara yesterday. And how she ended up at Adela's last night, drinking something, medicine, tea. Then it seemed like there was a doctor. Or was the doctor before this? Cristiana vaguely remembered it. But what she still couldn't recall was the pasta incident. There seemed to be an invisible barrier in her mind. She herself, of course, wasn't aware of it, and only something bad lingered in her memory, but so faintly, as if in a dream. And yesterday's events no longer troubled her as much, they receded, no longer seemed so horrible. So, as she regained her senses, Cristiana heard voices coming from the kitchen, or so it seemed. "You think she doesn't remember?" Adela asked with doubt. Cristiana had no doubt that it was indeed Adela. "Of course, she doesn't remember," a muffled, strangely familiar male voice angrily replied. "Such strong conditioning cannot be bypassed by an average intellect." "But what if?" "No what if." The man interrupted. "Well, goodbye, it's time for me to leave." Then they started speaking even more quietly, the front door closed, and everything fell silent. Cristiana got up, got dressed, opened the glass door, and walked into the hallway. "Good morning." Adela appeared from the kitchen wearing a long housecoat, holding a cup in her hand. "I was about to wake you up. Here's some coffee. Would you like some?" "Good morning, my dear. I don't drink coffee, my blood pressure is high, and the doctor advised against it." "All right then. Wash up, and I'll be waiting for you for breakfast." "Thank you." Cristiana smiled and went to take her morning ablutions. In the small kitchen, it was quite cozy: lace curtains, cups, a beautiful white set of furniture, a TV on top of a tall refrigerator, all new. Cristiana also liked the bathroom, tiles, and a washing machine of some unknown model. "You rent this apartment with your friend, right?" inquired Cristiana, examining the surroundings. "And where is your friend?" "Yes, I used to rent it with my friend," said Adela. "Used to, but now I rent it alone." "Nice little apartment. Must be expensive, I suppose?" "Some acquaintances left it to me with only utilities to pay and take care of things while they are away." "Great!" exclaimed Cristiana. "You're lucky. Have you ever thought of going back to the village?" she suddenly asked, not knowing why. "No," sighed Adela. "There's no one to go back to. I'll finish my training next year and find a better job. You need to get married, find a good guy," and Cristiana gently stroked the girl's hand. "Wouldn't hurt," smirked Adela. "But good guys are scarce, they get taken quickly," and she laughed at her simple joke. "You know, my dear," confided Cristiana, "how much I wish for things to work out between you and Fidelio. I wish that witch, Juliana, would disappear somewhere. Let him divorce her. He loved you, I know, and I think he still does. But she ensnared him, that witch." "Sonora," Adela lowered her head, "there's no need for that." "Yes, yes," Cristiana passionately spoke. "Pray every day, pray for them to get divorced. And there have been no children for 3 years, and I so want grandchildren, to spoil them before I pass away. What beautiful children you and Fidelio would have." "Well, enough." Abruptly stood up Adela and started clearing the dishes. Cristiana bit her tongue, realizing too late that she had said too much. Of course, it's unpleasant for Adela to listen to this, only opening old wounds. "I'm sorry, my dear," she said to her. "Forgive me, an old fool. What's on my mind comes out of my mouth." "All right, Cristiana Méndez," replied Adela. "What's done is done. Better tell me what upset you so much yesterday." Just like that, Cristiana pondered, listening to her feelings. "And really, why was I so upset yesterday? It's a common thing. Mother is just as rude as her daughter. She said all sorts of unpleasant nonsense to me. I can't even remember it clearly." Cristiana waved her hand. "Forget about both of them, they can drown in a swamp." "She didn't say anything about where they might be?" Adela asked cautiously. "No," Cristiana sadly replied. "You'll see what you'll get from her." They had breakfast with Adela, had coffee, and Cristiana went home. The girl gave her a ride to the bus station, as promised. In the distant northern capital, Fidelio and Juliana, completely alive and healthy against all odds, were arranging their new life. For the time being, they rented a small apartment, not in the center, of course, but on the outskirts, but still they were starting from something. The thing is, Fidelio finally managed to find a good job here. They had long dreamed of moving away from the village, away from this endless, suffocating, stagnant swamp, from the pitch-black gloom, from the hateful Juliana, their mother-in-law. "Why, what did I do to her?" she cried at night, complaining to her husband. "She never liked me from the beginning. Everything is not to her liking, what I eat, how I dress, too expensive and provocative. It's me. Me, who buys second-hand clothes to save us an extra penny. Well, tell me, where's the justice?" "Calm down, my love," Fidelio embraced her. "Everything will work out. She's just not used to you. You'll see, everything will change soon." But nothing changed. And it couldn't have changed. Heliana could feel the waves of dissatisfaction and hatred emanating from her mother-in-law with her whole being. She was a stranger to her, a city dweller who would never become one of them. Their way of life was different, like night and day. What friendship or even normal coexistence could there be? No, Heliana was not deluding herself on this account. As long as they lived under the same roof as Fidelio's parents, their marriage was in danger. Her own mother was absolutely right when she warned that nothing good would come out of a life shared with her husband's parents. They should have left immediately, right after the wedding, or even better, without any wedding at all. Who needs those silly ceremonies now, the dress, the veil? And what about those repulsive, humiliating spectacles with Ransom, a crowd of guests, most of whom you see for the first time and probably the last in your life, their curious, greedy, insolent glances, vulgar jokes, drunken shouts, and obscene songs? Ugh! Heliana shuddered at the memory of how it could have been. Thank God they managed to avoid that nightmare. She had seen enough of such things at weddings of her friends, but here, in this gray, backward village stuck in the past century, all of it takes on truly monstrous, exaggerated forms. And the endless dirt. Yes, there's running water in the house, and even a heated bathroom, but everything is half done. Rusty pipes on the outside, a stripped bathroom, walls covered in mold. And the kitchen is no better. It's best not to mention the courtyard, a dump of unnecessary trash, pits, ruts, and impenetrable dirt. Do they actually enjoy living like this? That's why she insisted on having their own tiny apartment, just to avoid meeting her mother-in-law every day in the same bathroom. But even that didn't help. She endlessly annoyed her, every single day for the most trivial reasons. Oh, you're not up yet, it's already time. She makes a displeased face, as if it's not Saturday, and people sometimes want to sleep. Or, and you're going to feed your husband with this? Horror and disgust in her eyes. A normal fish soup tom yum, Fidelio really loves it, it's not greasy like all their horrible dishes. A beautiful diet soup and avocado salad. But she doesn't like anything, she sticks her nose into every hole. In the end, Heliana couldn't bear to live like this any longer. She gave Fidelio an ultimatum: either he does something to get them out of here, or they get divorced. It was a difficult decision for her as well. It's unknown what she would have done if he had chosen divorce, because she loves him so much. But Fidelio truly loved her too, so he started looking for remote work either in the capital or in a big city. For several months, there were no worthwhile offers. Well, that's understandable. It's not easy for a person who has just graduated from an agricultural institute to find a decent job. But then luck smiled upon them, a job was found in a big city, and the starting salary was good. They had to leave as soon as possible, the employer wouldn't wait. She was in a great mood on that day when she met her mother-in-law in the living room. She thought that since they would be leaving soon, she could try to bring some positivity at the end. Later, when they were gone, Fidelio would still miss them, his parents, after all, his childhood home, even though it was like that. It upset her, but he grew up here, his fondest childhood memories. In general, she came with goodwill, brought a box of chocolates, thinking of having a cup of coffee with her mother-in-law and having a normal conversation. She didn't plan to talk about the upcoming departure right away, later, with Fidelio present, but for now, she just wanted to improve their relationship a little. Good day, I brought this, the mother-in-law critically examined her, like a commander before a battle. Is there a celebration today or something? No, there's no celebration, Heliana smiled, just because. Should I make you some coffee? Yes, graciously agreed the mother-in-law, sinking into the armchair in front of the TV. The TV never turned off. Once they turned it on in the morning, it would blare all day long. Silly series, endless talk shows, and other brainwashing stuff seeped through the lives of these not-so-young people. Even when guests came, even if they were talking about something, they still didn't lower the volume. Heliana was often amazed. Why, doesn't it bother them? But apparently, it didn't bother them, it was a long-standing habit. It made her cringe, but they were fine with it. Heliana opened the cupboard where the package of whole bean coffee was. Are you going to make coffee now? Cristiana looked at her keenly. We have an electric coffee maker here. Another habit that Heliana couldn't get used to. She liked to brew coffee herself and didn't like using an electric coffee maker. Okay, she obediently agreed, but I'm going to make myself coffee in a pot. Fine, the mother-in-law just pursed her lips in displeasure. They sat down to drink coffee. The TV mumbled something mundane, and Heliana didn't pay much attention. The mother-in-law stayed silent, waiting for Heliana to say something. She had to speak up. She couldn't just sit there silently. What are you knitting? The daughter-in-law pointed to a plastic basin with green balls of yarn next to the armchair, where a colorful project was beginning on the knitting needles. Socks, warm winter socks, for everyone on the holiday. The mother-in-law smiled for the first time since Heliana arrived. That's great, it looks beautiful. Do you like it? Cristiana responded cheerfully. I'll make some for you too. I would knit smaller ones too. She sighed and looked meaningfully at Heliana, as if to say, when will I finally have grandchildren? Heliana understood such hints with just a glance. She had been bombarded with her insinuations, as if having a child was another obligation here. But aloud she said, Yes, of course, you will. Yes, the mother-in-law sighed, and when will you make us happy with grandchildren? Everything has its own time, Heliana smiled, determined not to give up her optimistic stance. Time. Cristiana suddenly snapped. That's right, time. Time, my dear, won't wait. At your age, I had already given birth to two, while you only think about enjoying yourself, only care about yourself. We won't have grandchildren from you. Or maybe you can't even give birth. The mother-in-law suspiciously squinted her eyes. It's been 3 years since you got married, it's about time. Everyone has their own timing, Heliana replied firmly but calmly. Does Fidelio know? The mother-in-law persisted. Does he know about your problems? I'm asking. Where did you get the idea that I have any problems? Heliana finally couldn't bear it any longer, getting upset. By what right did you decide to meddle in someone else's life? Someone else's? The mother-in-law squealed, standing up from her chair and looming over Heliana with her entire weight. Someone else's, you say? This is my son's life, my own son. When you have children, if you do, then you'll understand how a mother's heart aches. You're the stranger here. Until you give birth, you won't be ours. And if you can't give birth, just say so and don't create a spectacle. In my opinion, said Heliana, also getting up, you're the one staging a spectacle here, and she walked away to her own extension, where she fell onto the bed, sobbing. In the evening, when Fidelio came home, he found his wife in a completely distraught state. Did you have another argument? He asked wearily. Yes. Heliana screamed hysterically. I went to her with good intentions, and she... And tears flowed again. Then she told him everything. He pitied her again. Everything was as usual. Oh, Lord, they couldn't wait to leave. He had only one more week to work at the old place, and next Saturday, this Saturday, they would be far away from here. Finally, calming down a bit, Heliana decided to take a walk. There was only one route for walks here, to the store, the bus stop, and the village store that was the entire infrastructure. She walked, trying to clear her mind, bought a few things, and at the store's entrance, she bumped into her mother's friend, Yvonne Jimenez. They had actually met because of her, and thanks to her, she and Fidelio had come to visit her mother for her birthday. Heliana, Yvonne exclaimed with joy, why don't you come in, dear? I was just about to come in, the young woman smiled. Actually, I bought some cookies. I'm actually planning to leave for the city, Yvonne sighed disappointedly. Well, let's go, I'll tell you. It won't take long. And they left the store and stood at the bus stop. Heliana told the woman everything about the upcoming departure and her recent argument with her mother-in-law. Why is she like that? Heliana asked with tears in her eyes. I haven't done anything wrong to her. Oh, my dear, Yvonne sighed and pondered. You and Fidelio made the right decision. You need to leave. Nothing good will come out of such a life. Cristiana has always been difficult, to be honest, and it seems like it's only getting worse with age, and she let out a sad laugh. And you know, Yvonne added thoughtfully, I didn't want to tell you, but maybe I should warn you after all, just in case. I'm feeling uneasy. What's the matter? The young woman asked in surprise. Elvira came to see me yesterday, you know, the well-known gossip. She told me terrible things. At first, I didn't pay much attention, thought it was just nonsense, but now I'm starting to think that maybe it's not nonsense. What is it? Helena suddenly felt a cold rush through her legs, shivers down her spine, and her breathing became heavy. Let's sit down here, there doesn't seem to be anyone around. So, listen to me carefully, my dear, I hope it won't be necessary, but still, listen. Yvonne cleared her throat and said firmly. Elvira saw Cristiana adding poison to the pasta a few days ago. Poison? Helena felt a real shock. What kind of poison? She asked with a silly smile. Why? I don't know for sure. Elvira says it was rat poison. She allegedly saw a package of rat poison through the kitchen window while Cristiana was sprinkling it into the ground meat. I really hope it's all nonsense, but please, be cautious, and the woman hugged Helena tightly. In the same evening, Helena firmly decided that she wouldn't have a single piece of what her mother-in-law cooked, absolutely nothing, just to be on the safe side. So, when it came to the pasta, she deceived her vigilance, took small and sturdy bags with her, and discreetly threw everything into the bags, pretending to eat. The place was crowded, and it wasn't as difficult as it initially seemed. However, Fidelio, sitting next to her, was very distracting. But he would occasionally turn away, eat, drink, and talk. Helena was deathly afraid, not just for herself, but for him as well, but she didn't say anything to him at the time. She knew he wouldn't believe her, and it would only make things worse. Besides, there was no evidence. And her mother-in-law, knowing Helena's appetite for her fatty food, didn't suspect anything. Finally, the dreadful dinner came to an end, and they could leave. Helena didn't throw away the pasta. Instead, she wrapped it carefully in several layers of foil and put it in a thermos with ice. Early in the morning, while her mother-in-law and father-in-law were sleeping after yesterday's revelry, they left. Helena insisted on not saying goodbye to her parents and not revealing anything in advance, saying that she couldn't bear another scandal. We'll arrive and call them. Is that okay? Well, okay, Fidelio reluctantly agreed. But why all this secrecy? You see, if I tell everything now, your mother will just make a scene and won't let us leave, I'm sure of it. And I can't worry right now because she whispered something in his ear. Really? Why didn't you tell me earlier, my love? Fidelio gently embraced his wife. I wasn't sure before, I only found out recently. That's how they decided everything. They gathered and left secretly, without a word. Mother still sensed something, though, sighed Fidelio as he drove along the highway. It doesn't matter, we'll tell them everything soon, and I hope they'll be happy for us. Of course, with news like that, and he looked at his wife lovingly once again. First of all, after resting a bit from the journey, Helena went to the Bureau of Chemical Analysis and handed over the ill-fated meat with pasta for analysis. When she learned the results, she wasn't particularly surprised because she was prepared. But Fidelio, after learning everything and seeing the results of the analysis with his own eyes, was in a real state of shock. Words cannot describe what they went through. Of course, no one called their parents. In light of recent events, Helena's husband didn't even want to hear about his mother. He even considered going to the police to file a report. He even consulted a lawyer, but the lawyer dissuaded him, saying that there was no criminal offense and no one is imprisoned for intent. But she almost died. Fidelio was furious. From a legal standpoint, no, the lawyer calmly replied. If she had eaten the food and survived the poisoning, then yes, she would have been considered almost dead. But in this case, she prevented the potential consequences in time. You could, of course, harass your mother's nerves, file a complaint, but it would only add unnecessary stress, believe me. What should we do then? Fidelio covered his head with his hands. If you want advice, not legal advice, but purely human advice. Yes, please. Just move on, cut off contact with your parents, and try to forget all of this as a terrible nightmare. But they will find us themselves, won't they? If I'm not mistaken, and I rarely am, it's unlikely that your mother will go looking for you. You're probably right, Fidelio agreed. And with that, they parted ways. However, the experienced lawyer was mistaken because he didn't know all the facts and circumstances of this convoluted case. Cristiana, with absolutely no memory of her crime, eventually started actively looking for them. Right after returning from the city, she went to Ramon and demanded that they find her son. It's been almost 2 months since they disappeared. That witch, my daughter-in-law, must have taken our dear son away. Haven't they contacted you or written to you at all? No, exactly. There's been no news, none at all, Cristiana sobbed uncontrollably, wiping her tears with a handkerchief. Do you insist on a search? But there were no life-threatening circumstances when they left. Then search. That's your job. Who knows what might have happened to them? It can't be that our own son would just disappear without a word. The local police had to open a case. The Méndez family filed a report, following the proper procedures. They provided descriptions to all the stations, the regional center, and questioned witnesses. Ramon, the local officer, went to every person who attended the last dinner before their departure and spoke with each of them. The picture that emerged was far from pleasant. About 2 weeks had passed since Cristiana visited the police station. Once again, the doorbell rang, and the Méndez family saw Ramon, accompanied by another man, distinguished, mustached, and serious-looking, in uniform. Cristiana, Vasco Méndez? He said sharply, as if throwing stones. Yes, the couple replied, that's us. Allow me to introduce myself. Major Nicholas Prieto from the Internal Service. Investigative actions have been taken based on your report of the disappearance of your son, Fidelio Méndez, the man in uniform officially reported. And what? Cristiana asked, her voice strained, feeling a sense of impending doom from those official words. The investigation revealed circumstances that indicate your guilt, the mustached major pronounced, looking directly at Cristiana. My guilt, she exclaimed, interrupting the official. And may I ask, what is my guilt? My son is missing, or aren't you aware? In light of the aforementioned, I inform you that a warrant has been issued for your arrest, the major continued calmly, ignoring the woman's statement. What? Cristiana laughed mockingly, her face turning crimson. You've all completely lost your minds. Indeed, Ramon, Vasco finally spoke up, who had remained silent until then. What's going on with you? Ramon shrugged guiltily, avoiding eye contact. You are to accompany me to the detention facility, the visitor maintained his stance. You may gather your belongings. Please sign here. Oh, go away, all of you, Cristiana said, sitting down on a stool. I'm not going anywhere. This is some kind of stupid prank, right, Ramon? Ramon remained silent, subdued. You are being charged with deliberately causing harm to the life and health of your daughter-in-law, Citizen Juliana. This is madness. Vasco, breathing heavily and clutching his chest, slowly sat down on a stool. Wife, do you understand what they're saying? Of course not, Cristiana snapped. It's utter nonsense. Our son is missing, and they're here staging a circus. In the event of noncompliance with the orders of the official, I have an order to detain you, the major almost confidentially informed them, waving his hand. As if waiting for a signal, 2 tall men in the same uniform entered the room. Cristiana turned pale and began gasping for air spasmodically. The entire village gathered to witness Cristiana being taken away in a police car with bars. Look at what's happening, Holy Mother Protector. What is going on here? I knew it wasn't for nothing. Patricia Moreno, standing in the front row, ominously wagged her crooked finger. And her cat died, and everything around was covered in terrible filth. It was impossible to breathe for a week. And Elvira was the only one missing from this curious crowd. The investigation lasted for several months. During this time, the entire district, up to the regional center, was aware of the events. And the village buzzed like a beehive. The most incredible rumors circulated. Cristiana poisoned her daughter-in-law to death, they buried her in the city, and now they're going to exhume the body. They've already dug it up long ago and sent it for examination to the capital. Did you hear that Juliana was pregnant? It's all nonsense. She didn't poison anyone, the rat poison accidentally got into the meat. The cat is to blame. It showed up in the kitchen at the wrong time and vomited right into the bowl of ground meat, and Cristiana didn't notice. No cat vomited anywhere. These are all diabolical tricks. Accidentally, indeed, the poison got mixed up. Both the meat and the rat poison were on the same table. There was nowhere to turn. The kitchen is small. You've got it all wrong. It wasn't Cristiana poisoning her daughter-in-law, it was the other way around. It just turned out that the dosage was too small. Cristiana, being a large woman, didn't feel the effects, but it got to her head, which is why she seemed like she was going mad. And they locked her up in prison before the trial to protect her from Juliana's vengeful relatives. And there were even more incredible versions. It was their son, Fidelio, who poisoned his own wife and framed his mother because their son still loves Adela, but Cristiana was against it. It's not at all like that. Cristiana was cursed, that's the truth. She was hexed, and unknowingly, she added poison to the meat. And the cat paid the price first, the little thief. And Juliana is alive and well, and she's going to give birth soon. Strangely enough, the last version was closest to the truth, which was as follows. During the investigation, Cristiana denied everything. She cried, wrung her hands, swore and vowed that she was not guilty of anything, didn't poison her daughter-in-law, didn't buy any poison, and didn't add anything to the meat. But the cat died because Patricia Moreno, that hag, put a hex on it. The investigators frowned and quickly wrote something down in their papers. Then they subjected Cristiana to a lie detector test. They attached various sensors to her and made her answer the same questions. The results stunned everyone. The detector showed that she was telling the pure truth. But now it became a complete mess because the witnesses' testimonies and the results of the pasta and meat samples, as well as the exhumed cat, all clearly pointed to rat poisoning. But if not Cristiana, then who had tried to poison Juliana? They continued searching. Another investigator was sent from the regional center. He started from scratch, unraveling the threads gradually, slowly, and patiently. He questioned all the Méndez family members again, and, of course, Patricia. The latter gave the investigators more trouble than anyone else combined. I'm telling you, like it or not, the devil possessed their horrible cat, and Cristiana was under the devil's guidance. Yuck, the interrogator spat and drank liters of the strongest coffee each time after questioning the crazy old woman. The shopkeeper testified during the investigation that she had sold a factory-packaged rat poison to Cristiana Méndez. They checked the cash register, and everything matched. On that day, they only bought rat poison once. And through the persistent questioning of the village neighbors, an old story about Fidelio's relationship with Adela and the reason for their breakup came to light. Apparently, it was the reason she left for the city. The investigator pondered this and organized face-to-face confrontations, cross-examinations, and various clever investigative actions that revealed things that many of the case's participants had never known before because these things had been carefully concealed. Are you familiar with this woman? Of course, she's the daughter of my school friend. Did you know that she was dating your son? Well, of course, we all knew. It's a shame it turned out this way, Cristiana sighed. And were you aware of Adela's pregnancy? What? The investigator with satisfied jotted something down and didn't say another word. The next day, the the questioning continued with other participants. Are you familiar with this citizen? Yes, he's a doctor I always went to in the regional center. Do you know the specialization of this specialist? He's a homeopath, I believe. And what is your specialization? I'm a licensed psychiatrist. Do you admit to hypnotizing Cristiana Méndez? Yes, I used suggestive techniques on her. And lastly, Adela was interrogated. Are you familiar with this citizen? Yes, Adela reluctantly answered. What is the nature of your relationship? That's my personal business. The only business here is mine, and it's a criminal one. Please answer the questions or you will be placed under arrest. And so it went on. Finally, after several months of investigation, everything was revealed as it truly happened. Several years ago, Adela became pregnant by Fidelio, but only found out after they had already broken up because Fidelio met Juliana and fell head over heels in love with her. Adela, being vengeful, didn't tell him anything, deciding to keep this trump card for the future. She left for the city, gave birth to a healthy baby boy there, and left him in a maternity hospital. He is currently in an orphanage, and the paperwork for his adoption by a respectable childless couple is being prepared. Shortly after, Adela met the doctor and devised a cunning plan. She introduced Cristiana to this doctor, recommending him as an excellent specialist for treating her occasional headaches. The doctor repeatedly hypnotized Cristiana, implanting in her a dislike for her daughter-in-law. And approximately a year ago, they together decided to implant in Cristiana the idea of killing Juliana using rat poison. Then, after Cristiana committed the crime under the influence of suggestion, Adela brought her back to the doctor, and he hypnotized her to make her forget what had happened. In this way, they hoped to get rid of their rival and simultaneously gain control over Cristiana's agricultural land, which she had inherited from the former collective farm. Unfortunately, it was Cristiana who had received the best plots of land near the river. The psychiatrist planned to obtain these land parcels by influencing Cristiana to transfer their ownership to him. He intended to establish a fish farming business and a trendy eco-farm for tourists. Adela and this psychiatrist had been involved in a close relationship for several years. Adela even lived in an apartment owned by him. Adela herself dreamed of reuniting with Fidelio after informing him about their shared child once Juliana was already dead. And it was only through the intervention of fate and Elvira's curiosity that a real disaster was averted. Finally, after all the tribulations, Cristiana was released from custody. How she had changed! She returned home as a completely different person, becoming quiet and contemplative. She no longer argued with anyone or disputed. She turned to religion, frequently visited a distant monastery, conversed with the Holy Father, and sought forgiveness for her sins, both voluntary and involuntary. Fidelio and Juliana had a daughter. They named her Elvira in honor of that Elvira, without whose intervention this girl would hardly have come into the world. After learning all the circumstances during the investigation, the young couple felt sorry for Cristiana. On the next New Year's Eve, she received an unexpected gift. Her son and daughter-in-law came to visit and brought their granddaughter. Cristiana wept, begged for forgiveness from Juliana, and even tried to kneel, but her daughter-in-law wouldn't allow it. "Stop, Mom," she said, "please stop. We are one family. What happened is in the past. And you are not to blame for anything. Is it true, Juliana?" Cristiana timidly asked, disbelieving her ears. "Is it true, my dear, that you forgive me, an old sinner?" And she burst into tears again. "Everyone gets what they deserve. And it means you deserve forgiveness and another granddaughter," her daughter-in-law comforted her. "My daughter," Cristiana and her daughter-in-law embraced, leaving behind all past grievances. Adela and the psychiatrist were sentenced to 5 years in prison, receiving what they deserved. Cristiana now lived a peaceful life, occasionally scolding her husband Vasco for not repairing the gate again, as their beloved son and pregnant daughter-in-law were soon to visit. Juliana was expecting another child, this time a boy. And Cristiana was immensely happy with this news. The mother-in-law decided to get rid of her disliked daughter-in-law and added poison to the pasta with minced meat. The woman smirked and began to enjoy her dinner.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe.